This year, I had 3 kindergarten teachers quit the first week of school. And when you ask them why, it's behavior.
That's Susanne Goodin, Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources at Elmore County Board of Education in Alabama, a 30-year educator who built the retention systems her district depends on to stay staffed. What she has seen on the ground will challenge what you think you know about why teachers are leaving.
When I got the job at Casada Elementary School in 2004, every job opening that I had, 300-400 people would apply for it. And so it was not a problem to find people. Today, we'll have about 12 people apply for a job. I left there in 2014, so just a little over 10 years later, it has dropped that significantly.
In this episode, you'll learn why student behavior, not workload or pay, is the number one reason teachers are walking out. The specific small changes Susanne made that immediately made her staff feel heard, and how her Leadership Academy is rebuilding a pipeline of campus principals from within. I'm Dr. Matthew Flippen, and this is Transformational Educators. You've had such a unique leadership journey, serving as a teacher, an assistant principal in the same community inside of a county that now you are in a leadership role in the human resources position. So I know that perspective gives you a really deep understanding about what strong schools look like, not just from a structural standpoint, but also through people. So today what we'll do is we'll focus on what you've learned about finding, developing, and supporting great educators and leaders, if you're good with that.
Yes, I'm absolutely good with that. That perspective of working in the same community for so long also is kind of scary because you've seen the drastic changes as well. And I hope we'll have some time to talk about that too, because it's so different. Just 10 years ago, it was different.
Yes, no, that's really true. And the skills that educators and leaders need has changed dramatically over the time that you've been an educator. So, well, let's get started. Let's back up to like when you were early in your career and just seeing, the from going from classroom to principal. What is it that you learn that is most important about the people side of education?
I think that's the part that I was ill prepared for. I learned by doing. I was a teacher and then an assistant principal. And when I got my first principal job, I was 29 years old. And I consider that to be pretty young. Looking back, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, they put me in charge of a whole building. But it was kindergarten and first grade only. And so elementary world for sure. And I had been a fourth grade teacher, but I had never worked with early childhood elementary children or teachers. And so learning the people was something I learned how to do very quickly, because when I got my first surveys back, they were not good. Is Ms. Goodin approachable? And a high percentage of the people said no. And so that really hurt my heart. And I thought, what? No, I am they can talk to me. But I had to self-reflect about, why do they feel that way? Why do they feel like I'm not approachable? What can I do differently? And what I discovered was I was running down the hallway to get things done. And I wasn't stopping and asking about their family or asking about their husband who had recently been ill or checking in on my people. And as a result, they felt like I was somebody they couldn't talk to. And so I think that year one, what I learned more than anything else is, don't let the surveys hurt your feelings. Do surveys so that you can get honest feedback and then use it to self-reflect, because they were right. I was running to do the job and I did a good job at the job, but I wasn't doing a good job with the people. I had to change my ways.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And obviously your heart was in the right place. I think many times as leaders, we have wonderful intentions, but the way we're coming across to others doesn't always reflect the message. And so what a gift that you asked the survey that gave you that insight, so that you had that early enough, and that you did have the heart that said, hey, this isn't who I want to be. I want to be approachable. Yeah. And why is it that you wanted to be approachable? Like, why was that important?
Well, I mean, my entire career, I've stood on the fact that if we'll just talk to each other, we've just got to have professional conversations that, where we're being real, where we're being authentic, where we're talking about things that matter and we're telling our truth. And my truth might not line up with your truth, and that's okay. We don't all have to agree, but we have to be respectful of each other's opinions. And so I've tried from the get-go to be somebody that you can come and talk to me, and I'm not going to hold it against you. I understand that you have an opinion, and I'm going to appreciate and respect that. But I expect you to treat me the same way, and respect my opinion.
Yeah.
And so, we teach here in Elmore County Fierce Conversations. I don't know if you've ever read that book by Susan Scott. And Fierce Conversations sounds like sounds mean, doesn't it? Yeah.
It sounds like warriors.
Yeah, it's not. It's not that at all. If you look it up, she really talks about having intentional conversations, authentic conversations where we tell each other the truth. And it's not just about education. It's about your personal relationships and other, in businesses. I think she goes and works with like large companies, but it's a good one if you want to check it out. But the value of that in changing for the better, us just talking to each other, that's why I think it's important.
Yes. Yeah. And so being approachable so that someone can come and have an authentic, vulnerable conversation with you is a key trait, obviously, in the leaders. So I'm thinking about how this translates over to when you were looking at recruiting, developing, and supporting your people, right? So translate that first leadership experience into, what you saw were some of the gaps in just starting at the campus level, the recruiting and developing of team members.
I was very fortunate that when I got the job at Casada Elementary School in 2004, every job opening that I had, 400 people would apply for it. And so it was not a problem to find people. And when you have that kind of pool of people, you are really lucky that you can put together a team that is just stellar. And so the principals today are not in that same position, not in our school district anyway. As the human resources director, I, of course, can see how many people apply for every job. And Casada Elementary School, still in existence in our school system, today we'll have about 12 people apply for a job at the same exact school. I left there in 2014. So just a little over 10 years later, it has dropped that significantly. So supporting our people is more important than ever, and retention is more important than ever, because that recruitment piece has become, just for lack of a better term, a nightmare, because we're all fighting for the same 15 that graduated from our local college. And so I know that you guys are growing your own kind of vibe. You guys have help and support there. And we want to try to do more of that here, retaining who we have, growing our own. And, we do try to recruit, but it's a struggle.
Yes. Yeah. Now I can imagine some of our listeners that are younger principals can't even imagine a day where there were 400 applicants to a position, but that did used to happen. I don't know if that'll happen again, the way that the trend is going. So you're right. We've got to look for strategies that expand the pool, and the growing team members that are internal is part of that. But you mentioned the part about developing current staff. So tell us a little bit about what you've seen maybe that you implemented that was effective there, or that you've seen campus principals do inside the county that is effective, so that retention stays high.
Well, what we've implemented is the teacher retention task force, we call it. I guess probably about 6 years ago now. I was in HR at that point as well, and our superintendent is really open to me coming up with new ideas and sharing them with them. So I went into his office one morning and I said, we got to do something. I'm watching TikTok last night, and every other video is teachers leaving and why they're leaving and why they don't feel supported and why they feel like this is a terrible profession. And I just don't feel that way about the profession, and it breaks my heart to see it. I don't think our people are talking to us, and I think we need them to talk to us. So we came up with a teacher retention task force where each school, and we have 18, they vote on who their person will be to come over and be on the task force. And then really all we do is have frank, open conversations about, why don't you like working here? What could we do to make it better? What do you think we need to change? And then based on how those conversations flow, determines on who I set up meetings with them. Are they going to meet with CM Child Nutrition? Are they going to meet with the curriculum department because they're upset about assessments? Are they going to meet with our superintendent and our board because they think we need, more coverage for our English as a second language babies? What is the problem? And then I facilitate getting them to talk to the person who can help them solve it.
Hey, educators. I hope you're enjoying this conversation. At Graceland University, we believe real change in education starts with compassionate leadership and practical support. That's why we share stories like this. If something in today's episode spoke to you, maybe about your purpose, your next step, or how you can make a bigger impact, I invite you to explore how Graceland walks alongside educators through degree programs and strategic partnerships. Scan the QR code on screen or follow the link in the show notes to learn more. Now let's get back to the episode.
Can you share one of the areas that you identified that you've been able to improve the feedback in that area?
Sure.
Since you created that.
One of the things that the very first thing that came up is there are people in our schools doing jobs that they don't get paid for. Pretty heavy lifting jobs like department head or grade level chair, where if you are the grade level chair for a department that has 16 teachers in it, that's a pretty big job to keep up with all those people. But there was no extra pay for that work. And so they asked for a department head stipend. And so now if you're the department head or you're the grade level chair, you get a stipend annually. That's one of the things that's happened. They said at the end of the 9 weeks, they get very frustrated with trying to get all their grades in and their makeup work done. And so they asked if they could just have a half a day where it's just a day for them to get their grades in. The board approved that. So the children release a half a day, 1 day at the end of the 9 weeks so that the teachers can finalize grades. Assessment changes have been made. Procedural changes have been made. I created one of the things they said was, we don't have time to find information about being an employee. When I'm going out because I have to have knee surgery, I'm having to dig through a 90-page employee handbook to find out what I need to do to have my knee surgery. And so they said that's a struggle for us. It's a pain. So I came up with an email address, info Elmore CO, and they can email that email address and it comes directly to me. If I don't know the answer, I know usually who to forward it to get the answer, where you can ask me any question, doesn't matter what it is, and we'll answer it. So if you need to have knee surgery, ask us to this email address. So little things like that, little changes where they feel like they were heard, because they were heard. We're trying to make their experience in Elmore County better. So not big sweeping change, just little things to make their experience better.
Sure. But individually, those were small things. But when you add them all up, that's a pretty significant effort to improve support and retention. I totally get that. I love how you started that out saying, we're not hearing from our people. I'm thinking, well, that sounds like your first principalship response that you got, which is, but we're going to pull them in and get feedback. And of course, people feel so valued when you listen and respond, right, to the feedback that was given. And so it sounds like lots of stakeholders felt listened to and now feel supported. Have you been able to track a difference in retention rates since you started that task force?
No, unfortunately, I haven't seen much improvement in retention rates, but I do a report annually that I send to all of my board members. And a lot of people are leaving education because of things that I can't fix. When we do exit interviews, we have them report back to us why they're leaving. And so much of the reasons why they're leaving are because of the discipline of children and the lack of support from parents. We are also working on that, trying to tackle that and with a whole separate initiative. But yeah, it's a struggle right now to keep people and to find people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. There's some data that we've looked at that shows that the two biggest reasons people leave are student discipline, right? Behavior management kinds of issues, which can be a skill. I mean, I think about, behavior issues that you faced when you were starting a teacher, as a teacher years ago versus what's today. And it is a different skill set required if you were going to go be a fourth grade teacher today. Right. And so there's sometimes a gap there so that's probably the number one reason teachers are leaving is related to discipline. The second category, you may see this, is is identified as campus culture and how you feel supported, and we look at culture and say, well, that's somewhat, a lot of times that's a campus leader sets culture. And so having the right leader in place, is important. So talk to us about when you're recruiting a new campus leader, what are the traits that you're looking for in that leader to know that they're going to fit with? I can hear, for your district, how you approach people, how your superintendent approaches people, desire to build trust, desire to build community. But walk me through what's it take from a character standpoint to get hired as a leader for you?
We do want to look for people who want to support the people in the school. And I'm trying to think the best way to say that, because all that's coming to mind is people who love people. I almost hate to use this term, but almost like a cheerleader. We have seen that we had a principal in one of our communities who just retired last year. He was the epitome of a cheerleader. He was constantly cheering on his people. He was constantly sharing about them on social media. He would scream it from the rooftops about how great his school was and how great his kids were and his people were the best people. He would almost like argue with you. And I feel as though that works better in today's world. It might not have worked as well 20, 30 years ago, but that is what we need, I think, as leaders today. People are going to support people and celebrate their achievements and help them get better. When you discipline, come at it from a standpoint of, okay, I'm seeing this problem. Let me tell you what we're going to do to try to help you improve. And so those are the kind of people I'm looking for.
Yes, right. Obviously being approachable. We say being curious, right? That curious is what helps you want to learn. Being a good communicator and collaborator. Yeah. Are you able to promote people from within to step into those leadership roles? Are you having to recruit from outside the county?
We recruit from outside the county some, but we do have a lot of internal people because we have 1,400 employees. Over 700 of those are teachers. If they're in a leadership program, we have something we call the Leadership Academy. It's professional development that I provide. And every month, we do a different topic. One month it might be human resources. One month we'll call the special ed director in. She'll talk about special ed. And we go out to the schools and hold a lot of the meetings so that the principals can pop in and talk about their experience, and they can meet several different principals throughout the Leadership Academy. And then I told you earlier, I teach the book Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott, where we talk about the importance of having open communication. So we are almost trying to grow our own leaders as well. And I have, I think, 13 in the Leadership Academy this year. And so, yes, a lot of our positions will be hired by people who have already proven themselves in our school system, that they're good teachers and good communicators, and they come to work and, all of those things. But we also do consider people from outside the school system. We hired quite a few from outside the school system.
Yes. Yeah, I love the intentionality of the academy and the approach you're looking for, because that contributes to success. Yeah, for sure. Well, when we're looking at backing up to just talking about retaining great teachers, and you mentioned this culture of this one principal that retired, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, I was not happy about that retirement. Right.
Yeah. But sometimes it's, you can't do anything about it. But when you look at other campuses and are you able to see the connection between culture, strength of culture, and turnover?
I can't with the data that I have pulled, it's really hard for me to make a direct connection between culture. I do believe we have some principals that are better at culture than others. It's really hard for me to answer that because I pulled the retention data last year and I was really surprised by the numbers. The places that I thought would just be the greatest place and nobody would ever want to leave, that seems like the happiest place on earth to me, their numbers were actually kind of high. And so my data wasn't correlating.
Sure.
And I really, truly have to believe that it's the discipline at the school is what's driving our people out. And even as supportive as I believe that administrator is, and constantly backing their teachers up and trying to help, when it's causing an interruption to instruction, pulling that child to work with him or her to help the instruction go on in the classroom. I see all that happening. I would expect retention to be better at those places, but we still have turnover that I'm struggling to explain, really.
Yeah. Well, and when you think about turnover, there's retiring because you've reached the age. So that can happen. But were you able to kind of exclude what you would call normal retirement? Because I think about normal turnover is supposed to be in like the 8% to 10% range, just given where people are in their careers. But were you able to see, if what you would call abnormal?
Right. Well, because I do the report where I write down each person that retired or resigned and why.
Right.
It does help me kind of get a better picture. And that we have a lot of military. We're close to Montgomery, Alabama, which has, a big military base. So we have lots of transition in and out as well because of that. A lot of our teachers might be married to someone who works, at the military base. And so I see a lot of moving. The part that bothers me the most is in 2004, when I became a principal, the thought of a teacher leaving mid-year was unheard of. Like, you didn't leave your babies in the middle of the year. No, I'm going to stick it out till May and then I'm leaving. This year I had 3 kindergarten teachers quit the first week of school. And when you ask them why, it's behavior. They just, the children came in with no skill set on how to do school, which would be a good argument for pre-K, right? But
yeah,
a free pre-K. But the teachers just were new and ill-prepared to deal with what they were seeing. Far worse behaviors than children coming to kindergarten not potty trained. What? That things happen now that did not happen before. And I feel like those things are exasperating the situation. And those are things I don't know how to fix without trying to support parents, with maybe a pre-K program.
Susanne, you were sharing about kindergartners coming to school not potty trained. And actually, that's very common. And it's a shock to people that have, came through school in a different age. And but today, there is a base level that there are a lot of children missing, and so the need for schools to do more parenting or training of parents is a real thing for sure. And I can only imagine being fresh out of college and stepping into a kindergarten classroom ready to teach and realizing that that the children aren't prepared, where you think that they should be. Now, that is part of the reason why we think the teacher's assistant, the paraprofessional, is a great candidate to step in those roles, because average age of is later, right? I think for our students it's 35 years old, and so they've raised their own children in most cases to some point, and they've worked in the school in some capacity, and so they know what they're getting into. But that is a real challenge, and I'm not sure full preschool is a solution. I think but something that would say kid camp. I mean, something that's like, get prepped for kindergarten, and here's the way we're going to do that. Here's minimum milestones. I'm not sure how to best make that happen, but children, if they come in behind in kindergarten, you're playing catch up in a way. As I don't know enough about Alabama, is there funding being discussed for universal pre-K?
Well, we do have a pre-K program in Alabama.
Okay.
And it is voluntary, whether or not it's grant-based. And we do participate. We actually have 10 pre-K programs in the Elmore County Public Schools, but each classroom holds 18. And it's a lottery system. And so, just whether or not your name's drawn out of a hat, and because it's free, everybody applies for it. And so it's not always our neediest children who are involved in it.
Yeah. You have 18, but you might need 100, it sounds like.
That's kind of my point, that can't let everybody in. And really, if it were for everyone, then we could, make a grab on the children who really need it the most.
Yes. Yeah. I understand that. Yeah, I love your heart for your team and for the children. Obviously, it's gonna be hard for them to catch up, when they're starting behind. When we talk about when you're helping your leaders that are facing these challenges, and I'm thinking about the campus principal, right? So they're calling you saying, "Hey, I just had people leave. How can you help me?" What are some of the things you found provide them support as a campus principal? Because I know a lot of campus principals, in fact, I think disproportionately, campus principals are leaving the profession at even greater numbers. What have you found is helping them sustain?
I think one of the things we've done that have helped us is retired teachers. We've been contracting with them. So, and it helps the retired teacher as well. So when they retire, I call them mentors, my retired mentors, and we hire them and we just pay them an hourly rate. You don't have to pay insurance. And so it's cheaper for the school system. And when a kindergarten teacher leaves the first week of school, I already have a hired mentor teacher who can jump in and help us, at least until we can get someone else hired. If we can't get anybody else hired, they can at least consistently teach the math and the reading, do the 2-hour block of most important instruction in the morning. So that's the way we've been trying to help and support our principals, is just give them people that they need to survive when something like that occurs, which, the first week of school, losing the kindergarten teacher is just a mess. And that's just one example of things that happen. Trying to have people on hand that can jump in, that have the experience, that can make things happen. And that's been really helpful for us. They were hired to be mentors to our brand new teachers, and they do that work. But they also sometimes jump in those odd situations where we just need some help. And that helps the principal, get their footing so they can handle the problem.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, because some people will turn to the long-term sub model, but that's not necessarily an internal person that's proven and experienced. And so I love the idea of using mentor teachers that have been recontracted to help in that. I think that's a great strategy. Um, do principals have any opportunities to get together and just share best practices, get encouragement, uh, grow together that the district or you are
We do
facilitating?
professional development for our principals and assistant principals once per month. And so we usually do some kind of a book study. Right now, our book study is Atomic Habits and how that applies to school leadership. And so that's been a fun one. We've had a good time with that. But we provide them some kind of PD depending on, we survey them and ask them, what do you want to learn more about? Or if we've had situations, where I felt like, okay, they really kind of need to know about this and be prepared for this. So we do that once a month, and we give them like an hour lunch break so that they can go and eat together. And I oftentimes go with some of them. And so that's a fun day usually, for all of us to get together. Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, when you think about just environments that you worked in or led, or that you've seen today, what is really a highlight story that you like to share about a positive thing going on in the district right now?
I think the thing I've been most excited about, and after 30 years, I needed something to be excited about. I think I hit kind of low points where I'm like, what new and what can we do to make things better to get me excited about my work? And that happened this year. We started a YouTube channel called The Heart of the School. And as a part of it, we are doing a podcast. The entire purpose of it is to interview people who work in the Elmore County public school system. And I mean everybody. Anybody who's willing to come on my podcast. And I had over 100 sign up.
Wow.
Yes, enough guests for years.
Years worth.
Yeah, because we put ours out every 2 weeks. So,
Okay.
so I had so much interest, and I love that. I love that they want to tell their story. I love that they want to tell the heart that they have for the students in Elmore County and the work that they do. Bus drivers, cafeteria workers, custodians, teachers, aides, principals, district leadership. I spoke with a judge who handles our attendance, our truancy cases. And so, we might cast a wider net later, but the point right now is the people in Elmore County need to know how the employees of the school system feel about their job and working with their children. And so it's just getting our story out. And so that is something that I'm excited about in our school system right now. And hopefully it'll be a way to get parents maybe to come on the podcast and talk about ways that we could communicate better. I can just see this spiraling in a good way in so many different directions to help us. And so that's what we've got going on right now. And so I'd like for you to check it out if time permits.
Yes. Yeah. Please. What is the name of the podcast? We'll be sure to include
The Heart of the School.
The Heart of the School. Okay. Fantastic. And it's on Elmore County school district. So fantastic. We'll be sure to include that in the show notes. So Susanne, I really appreciate you taking time to be with us today. I mean, your heart for people, your heart for children that you refer to as your babies. I love that. And it really shows how you feel responsible for them as a parent, as a mother, as a grandmother. I know you have some grandchildren in the district now yourself. And what a blessing that is. But, this deep commitment to seeing people be successful, I see that in you as a leader. So I just commend you for staying in that through difficult times. I mean, post-COVID has been a hard time still. And the effects of that season are going to be felt for a while. So thank you for staying in the fight, having fierce conversations, and continuing to lead. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to have a voice and share with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you found today's episode valuable, please share it with a colleague or educator that would benefit. And if you haven't already, please follow the podcast, Transformational Educators, so you never miss an episode. And until next time, keep leading with purpose and building schools where both students and educators thrive.
If today's conversation gave you fresh insight or inspired you to lead with purpose, please follow the show and tell a friend. It helps us reach more educators who want to make a difference. For more stories, resources, and tools to support your leadership journey, visit graceland.edu. Until next time, keep leading with courage and care. If you want to keep learning about transformational strategies in education, click the next video.